It'll be fine.
Yes.
So maybe then we should start.
The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz and Dan Rylance here, and we're very pleased to be joined once again by the Chief of the Oshkosh Police Department, Chief Scott Greuel. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Welcome back.
Thanks for inviting me back. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, and we're going to spend the next hour talking about all kinds of stuff. But, you know, since we're quickly approaching the holiday season here, want to just talk. Each year the police department does, you know, nice stuff. They deliver gifts to certain families in need here in the area. You know, maybe we should talk a little bit about that. I'm sure that, you know, you need gifts donated to the program. How many families do you typically serve in that program, Chief?
Well, and I appreciate you bringing this information forward and visiting that for us, because it is a very important program that we do. We serve almost 300 children every year. They're children in our community that have been identified as being in need, and they are screened, and our sources we're pretty comfortable with that. And so every year we have the generosity of the community that donates gifts. There are various drop-off sites around the community. Of course, they can bring them to the police department. And we actually have and every, you can see the advertisement right now in the Oshkosh Northwestern. But Saturday, December 13th at 9 o'clock until noon at Blessed Sacred Parish, we will have the gift wrapping, and the delivery will take place that same day. And there's just an outpouring of support. The volunteers, the educational facility that we use there is just packed full of volunteers that help us wrap the gifts, and then we have auxiliary officers, and you know, volunteers can go and ride along with our officers and help deliver the gifts, and we try and take care of all that the same day.
Okay, so that's going to be on the 13th of December from 9 to noon. And what was the church?
Blessed Sacred Parish on High Avenue.
Okay, not to be confused with Most Blessed Sacrament on Division or whatever street that's on. Okay, so we got that right. All right, so not only do you need gifts, but probably cash donations as well, or
yeah, I mean, some residents choose to do that, and we have a team that will go out then and match what has been requested for certain kids, and they will go and purchase those gifts. But you can call our police department. The Santa's hotline number is advertised in the paper, and you can basically adopt a child, and they will have a wish list from that child of things that he or she wants, and then the sponsors can purchase all or some of those, whatever they choose, and that's what eventually ends up at the gift wrapping.
Well, and you know, it's a great thing for the police department to do, but you know, there's probably some scientific reason behind this rather than just wanting to do something of goodwill. I mean, I would think that when there's families in need, especially at the holiday time, does additional crime sometimes stem from that?
Well, I think if you talk to most officers, they'll tell you that in times of poor economy, in times when, you know, I mean, Christmas holiday tends to be somewhat materialistic, there does seem to be a surge in you know, property offenses and some, you know, street crimes. I think, yeah, we do see spikes at certain times of the year. The holidays are certainly one of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, and is Santa's hotline, is that a different phone number than the actual police department?
Yes, it is. It's,
okay. Yeah. Do you know what it is
offhand? I don't know offhand.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
That's
I should have
right.
brought that along.
But they can always call the police department and ask what the Santa's hotline is.
Yeah, and it is advertised every day right now, and the Northwestern has that number
Okay,
published.
all
so.
right. Okay, very good. Well, there's a lot of serious things. Not that that's not a serious thing, but that's kind of a happy thing too, because that's helping some folks out.
And it's a good time of year to, I mean, it's what we should be talking about.
Yeah.
part of this,
Exactly,
yeah.
yep. Well, recently there's been some articles in the paper about, you know, a death at a house over on Boyd Street, and it was recently determined that it was a suicide. We're not going to get into the specifics of all that because of reasons that you've indicated. But, you know, some neighbors have complained that this is, they've alleged it's a drug house, it's this, it's that. And I guess, you know, as I sit back and I read the things that I've been reading, has this house had a history of problems? And if so, how has the nuisance abatement program been applied in that particular case?
Yeah, that particular address, we've had some ongoing issues with in the past. It was a successful address that we've done a nuisance abatement on. There were a number of problems there, from disturbances to drugs from the previous tenants. It is a tenant residence. Recently went through a change of ownership. That it remains tenants that are renting from the homeowners. And we've had some issues there. It was part of an abatement plan that we finished back in June. Before the abatement process was started, we had 22 calls for service, battery incidents, drugs, disturbances, animal type complaints, which led to the abatement process. Ultimately, the plan resolution was eviction of the tenants there. Now, certainly we do have some ongoing issues there, but that has been deemed a success of our abatement process.
Okay. And you said that there was a change in ownership over there. Is the current owner, was he part of the abatement, or was the abatement under the previous owner?
It was under the previous owner.
Okay. So if we had an abatement that was finished in June, this current owner has only had the property for, you know, 4 or 5 months?
Right.
Okay, all right. Okay, good. Did you have anything else on that one before we move on?
No, it's just my neighborhood, and neighbors are concerned.
Yeah.
It has been a problem house. We all know what house it is, and there are a lot of rumors. It will be good when we do find out what the cause of death was for this person, but it's a lot of older people live in that area that are concerned about it.
Well, and I think it's helpful, too, to get the information out there that, as you said, the
Yeah.
abatement program, the abatement process was a success, and so the program, at least in this case, worked, and it's got a new owner, and, you know, so hopefully there will be a more successful track record with this owner and his or her tenants. So, but the Near East neighborhood as a whole, and I don't know, is this particular
It is not.
address, it is not in part of the Near
It
East
is not,
neighborhood?
no.
Okay, so let's talk about the Near East neighborhood. How have things been going in that area?
We think things have gone very well. Our team policing model, as it's been applied in that area, is working very well. We've enhanced our neighborhood watch groups. Citywide, we've doubled our neighborhood watch groups in the past year, and many of them have been on the east side of the city and the Near East neighborhood area. We've renewed and strengthened our relationship and partnerships with many of the neighbors there. Of course, we're working very closely with other city departments as it relates to properties and things there. We've had an opportunity through team policing to shut down some drug houses. We've got ongoing dialogue with many of the neighbors, and so we've translated the Near East neighborhood into sort of a model for the rest of the city, and our team policing efforts fall right in line with that, and so we've had a great deal of success. Of course, it's not ending. I mean, we need to maintain and renew those efforts. The sergeant that manages the Near East and the East Side, Team 2, has kind of a unique dialogue going with the residents in that they have, he broadcasts an email message to them as often as he can to share information. and that has gone very well. And it's something that we're trying to expand citywide now with the other teams.
He's not a policeman. He's part of the neighborhood.
That's right.
And I attended a meeting over at Webster Stanley, and he was there. There were probably 50, 60 people there.
Yeah.
He was passing out his list. If you live in the east side thing, want an email, you put your name
That's
down,
right.
and those people really rely on that.
Yeah.
The communications is excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, we're pretty proud of that, and the
Yep.
list grows, and you know, I'm sure at some point it'll become, you know, difficult to manage, and so we have to take advantage of some technology and to you know, help with that. But that was something that the sergeant kind of took it upon himself to do, and
Can we mention his name?
sure, Sergeant Steve Kaiser,
Yep.
who is very active in his team.
Yep.
And some of the things that he's doing, some of the other team sergeants are kind of modeling that. And he's done a very nice job. Most of the reason for the success that we've had in Team 2 is because of Sergeant Kaiser and the leadership that he's shown on his team.
And so what kinds of things, Chief, would go out in this email from Sergeant Kaiser?
Events from the past 24 hours, things that have a particular interest to neighbors, maybe if there's thefts going on from vehicles in a neighborhood, that's important to share. Those kind of things that would help the neighbors to be able to secure their own property. It can be used as a mechanism for things that are going on internally in the police department we'd like to share. I'm not sure how much he's done with that yet, but there isn't a lack of information to share on a daily basis of what's going on
so
in the
current.
shift. And it is current.
You know, in the old days, you go to a neighborhood watch once a month, and
Yeah.
the sergeant came in with what happened the last month.
Yeah.
That wasn't very current.
That it actually started as a shift recap that we're sharing internally. So all the supervisors, all the shift lieutenants, all the command staff, myself, we get a daily update 3 times a day from each of the shifts. Well, they will give us highlights of all the important things that have happened during that 8-hour shift, and team policing efforts that have occurred during that shift. And it gets distributed internally as well throughout the entire department. So from the top on down, it's an electronic way of holding almost a roll call briefing 3 times a day, in addition to the person-on-person contact that we have. So it's a great way to share information internally, and then from that, the offshoot of that was, let's share that information. And we filter it a little bit for some of the things that maybe the neighbors don't need to hear at this point, ongoing investigations, things that, you know, we have to kind of redact. But much of the information gets out just as we see it.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, as times change and technology changes, you know, and I think that this is one of your goals with your community policing and your team policing. You've had to come up with innovative ways, if you will,
That's right.
to do your job and to do it as best as you can do it. And so, you know, I applaud all of you within the department for, you know, kind of thinking outside the box a little bit.
If I can just expand on it a little
Sure.
bit, one of the things that we're trying to implement, and I'm confident that we'll be able to do that within the next couple of weeks, is part of our abatement process, part of our connection to the community and working with landlords and property owners is notifications for things that are happening on their premises in a timely manner. And so we're working right now to install, it's a CAD mining program that takes dispatch information, the same things that officers would see on their in-car computer screens as they're being dispatched. And it mines that information and allows us to utilize that information almost in real time. And the importance of that is we will be able to rely on technology to help us make notifications to landlords. As we've done abatements, one of the things the landlords keep telling us is, well, I wish I would have heard this sooner, that officers have been to my property so many times in the last year, where it didn't get to the point of the 3 qualifying types of complaints that we send them a letter for. And they ask us to, you know, can you call me? Here's my phone number. Call me day or night when I have an incident at my home. What we will be able to do eventually with this software and this CAD mining program is we will be able to program these landlord email addresses, their addresses in, so that when an officer gets dispatched or sent to a call, almost real time, we will be able to notify the landlord saying officers are out at your property. And that will start the dialogue then going of the landlord being able to pick up a phone and say, okay, I know officers are out there or have been out there recently. Can you tell me about it? You know, what information can you give me? And it helps to shorten the time frame of this, and we can take care of problems sooner, work with the landlords, develop that relationship, and I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Well, and I think too, as a tenant sitting back, knowing that their landlord may be getting contacted almost immediately, that is certainly not in all cases, because some just don't care. But I would think that those who have even a modicum of concern about what's going on for their landlord's property, I think that will help, because they're going to know, hey, my landlord's going to know, so maybe I need to toe the line a little bit.
I think you're right. I think that's going to be a natural consequence of that. And through this abatement process, and we've done 11 of them this year, we've found the property owners, 9 out of those 11 have been landlord-tenant type arrangements. There have been only 2 owner-occupieds, but we've found the property owners to be very responsible people. And they have all responded to the letters that have been sent out in a timely manner. They've all met with me. To this date so far, I've been able to manage and handle the abatement meetings, and we've left on a very positive note, and the abatements have been successful. And so we found through this process, I think when the revision to the policy or the city ordinance was occurring, there was this fear in the community that this would be a heavy-handed thing used by the police department, and that would be our first response, to things. And we started very cautiously and not rushing to judgment on a lot of these abatements. And in fact, when the ordinance was changed in April of 2007, we really didn't do our first abatement until January of this year. We wanted to get our data collection in order. We wanted to have a system in place where we really, truly were trying to identify our top problem addresses, and so we took our time and didn't rush to judgment. And then, of course, we had to sift through all that information that we had to make sure that they were qualifying type incidents. Those things that were drug-related complaints, that were disturbances that weren't necessarily called in by the people that were involved, noise-type complaints, animal complaints, those types of things that were qualifying. And then look at our volumes of calls for service and the worst of the worst, so to speak. And so I think we've been very successful so far. We do currently have 2 more abatement letters out, and it's a strategy that we're going to continue to use, not only with residences, but problem taverns and those kind of things that is a great tool for us.
Well, I think it's a good program, and I was honored to be part of a group that kind of looked at the criteria for this and how it was going to work before it actually went to the council and so forth. And so I just think it's a good thing, and it's nice to know, because when we were sitting in that room kind of going over things, that was, of course, as you may recall, one of the concerns is that it was going to be a heavy-handed thing. And so I'm glad to hear that it's not being used that way, because I think one of the concerns that some people in this community have is the way the community development department with their building and violations and that kind of thing, I think that they operate kind of heavy-handedly. So it's nice to see that this is not being done in the way so many people thought that it might be too. Can we just talk a little bit about the abatement program and what qualifies as something that needs abatement and how it works?
Yeah, of course the public nuisance ordinance always existed. Or has for some time. What changed was an alternate method to abate nuisances and gave the police department tools. But by definition, nuisances would be such things as disorderly behavior, batteries or fighting, substantial batteries, lewd and lascivious behavior, prostitution, theft, arsons, animal violations, adult entertainment, weapons complaints, anything that would be called in as a quality of life issue from a neighbor that, you know, if there's loud music constantly, we've got a band playing, you know, in the house, or it sounds like that, you know, to animals barking, to anything that would require police action. Now, we generally don't use if, you know, a person has, for instance, is the victim of a theft or damage to property, and we have to respond and take a report and do an investigation, or they were burglarized. You know, obviously, those are non-qualifying types
That's an
of
immediate
responses.
thing. That's not a process.
Well, and plus, it's the property owner or the resident making that complaint
right.
because they've been victimized.
Right.
So that's not fair to count
Right.
that incident towards the abatement. But it would be where others are calling on that property where it requires us to intervene in some manner. Most times, if we have to take some action, make an arrest based on a serious offense that happened there, that would be a qualifying type of incident. Now, you know, I know you know as part of the process as we were sifting through what qualifies, what doesn't qualify, domestics do not qualify. That's one of those incidents that, you know, we did hear from the different advocacy groups in the community that just wouldn't be right. And so those kind of things are what qualify. So what we do then is we look at our data and we take a look at the addresses that kind of appear on our radar screen then, so to speak, as being problems. As you can see in this, the document that I brought, I mean, many of these addresses, we've been there multiple times in a 12-month period. So we look at that 18 times, 20 times, 12 times, 22, 24, 36, it goes on. Obviously, we like to get to a point where we are catching on to that much quicker. But so what will happen is then, and most of these are initiated by the team officers in the field. They know the problem addresses that they're going to. Most of the time, the data just supports what they're telling us. So they will draft a letter, and we have a form letter, and they'll include in that letter the types of incidents, and they will go to the assessor's website, whatever the case may be, to get the property owner. That letter is then screened by me. I double check and I research the types of incidents just to make sure that they are qualifying incidents. We then send out a letter to the property owner, and they're required then to respond to that letter within 5 days. Call back to the police department, they'll call back to my administrative assistant, set up appointment with me. And then they have to date all responded very positively. So within that 5-day period, we will sit down, we will talk about and review the circumstances of why the letter went out, and we'll develop an action plan, an abatement plan. Most of them, the landlords have been aware of some of the issues, and most of the ones that have had immediate response have resulted from an eviction. And it is totally up to the decision of the property owner as to what ultimately they do. We give them some guidance. We try and talk about some legal issues as it relates to it. We can't give advice, but we try and produce some documentation to help them in that decision. And we come up with an action plan they sign off on before they leave my office most of the time. If they leave because there's some ongoing issues yet that need to get resolved, they're required to return an action plan that they develop to me within 10 days. If we continue to have problems 15 days after that letter results, then we have the ability to impose some fines, including some enhancers for not following the abatement plan. To date, we've not had to do that. And you can see from post abatement that many of these addresses we haven't gone back to again, or 3-4 times, but many of them are not qualifying type incidents. So I think there's a fairly
I'm just curious, I'm just thinking as you're saying this, how many of these owners with all of these calls for services knew about some of these before they came
Many
out?
of them did not.
Did not.
And that's part of the issue that we've identified through this process, is that we need to have some better dialogue with our property owners. And
You'd think with all of those, wouldn't you? I mean, just
You don't,
You don't,
as
huh?
a landlord, I
No?
can tell you, your tenants don't
Okay.
tell you anything.
okay.
that seems to be the case. And if it's not necessarily a multiple family apartment complex, where there tends to be a little bit more calling on each other. There's a little more awareness by the landlords. But if it's just a single-family home or maybe a two-family home, we're finding the landlords don't always know. And I think it's important for us to develop that relationship, and I think we strengthen the relationship with the property owners in all of these cases. And I think as we progress into that technology, we'll be on top of these issues much quicker. And of course, that'll cut down on repeated calls for service.
Sure.
And we will be able to ultimately achieve what we want in team policing, is increase our uncommitted time to do proactive things, reduce our calls for service.
Well, you know, I guess I've been very blessed because, you know, as many years as I've been a landlord, I've not had issues. And I hope that continues, because I don't want to show up on a little list like that, Chief. But yeah, it's amazing as you talk to the landlords, they don't know what's going on in their properties. And that doesn't make them a bad landlord.
No,
You know, I mean, you even if you go by the place every single day, you don't know what's happened the night before, and you can't babysit that property 24/7. So this is a good thing. Now, if you know, help us understand, Chief. If somebody just has, you know, they have a loud party, maybe 2 or 3 different times within maybe a 6-month period, would that show up as a reason for an abatement letter, or
it could?
You know, okay.
It could, and as we progress in this, my sense is we will be identifying problem addresses sooner. But it is likely that if an officer recognizes, or it comes up on our CAD mining capability, that this is a problem address, that those things will happen sooner. And of course, we try and hold the people committing the offense accountable. And in the case of the loud noise, you know, we would make contact, hold the people that live there accountable. But oftentimes, it needs to get the landlord involved in order for something truly to be abated. And this gives us another tool. But in your scenario, 3 times in a 6-month period, it's likely that that could lead to an abatement.
Otherwise, if someone just has a really loud muffler and every time they start their car it's a problem, but someone just calls the police maybe 1 time, you guys go out, maybe just, what do? You give them a warning, and then if they come back a 2nd time, then a fine for
it
noise,
depends.
or how does that?
It depends on the circumstance. If, you know, it depends on what is the nature of the offense. If it's a loud muffler, more than likely an officer would, you know, try and educate the person. You know, look, you know, 6 o'clock in the morning, as an example, people are still sleeping, you're being loud, you know. Maybe give them an equipment defect notice to fix their car, and try and, more than simply handing them a citation or a warning, try and make a bigger impact by, you know, looking at the bigger picture. If it continues, or, you know, if there is some sense of non-compliance from the beginning, then we would escalate our response, go to a citation, and go to, you know, an abatement process if it would continue, you know, 3 times in a 12-month period.
Okay.
And so there is no set, you know, response, but through our team policing efforts, through the abatement process, we're really educating our officers to think non-traditional.
Okay.
You know, in the past it's been very easy, and you know, I grew up in an era of law enforcement that your response was you give a ticket and, you know, there's the punishment, and you know, hopefully they've learned from it.
Right.
Sometimes it didn't take a citation, other times, you know, a citation was necessary. Now we're trying to think, you know, have our officers, and sometimes those are appropriate yet, but let's look at the root cause. Let's look a little deeper into it. Are there some, you know, non-traditional other options that can be used to resolve the problem without having to invoke a legal system, perhaps? And I think we're making some progress there.
One more real quick question
Absolutely.
on noise.
Oh, I'm enjoying this. This is, yeah.
You know, winter is approaching. Today it feels like faster than we'd like. But, you know, on the subject of noise, Chief, I mean, we've got a noise ordinance in the community that says, hey, you can't make excessive noise from you know, before 7 in the morning and after 10 at night. But we've got a community of a lot of shift workers, and if we have like a heavy snowstorm or something, and people need to, you know, snow blow their driveway in order to get out to go to work. Say they start blowing at maybe 10 after 10, they have to be to work at 11. I mean, do you guys take those kinds of things into consideration?
Sure, we do, and that's kind of a subjective response. You know, we will take each situation and take a look at all the circumstances, and you know, those time periods are, you know, although they're in ordinance, most of that really applies to heavy-duty noise, construction, and those kind of things, and so then it becomes a subjective thing after that. If it's snow blowing one time a week at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 4 a.m., that's one thing. If the person's out there every day, you know, then you know, there could be some other issues that need to be discussed. But you know, certainly everybody goes to work and lives different schedules than everybody else, and you know, you take those things into consideration. I don't remember a time where we've actually cited somebody for snow blowing
What
at
time
4
are you
o'clock
blowing
in the
snow?
morning.
I haven't been. I haven't been.
But it depends on the circumstances and the history and, you know, the
Sure.
relationship and those kind of things.
But I thought it was, you know, an interesting question when you're talking about noise and,
Sure.
you know, who knows what this winter holds in store,
Sure.
but if it's anything like last winter, there's probably going to be people who have to be out there blowing snow before 7 in the
That's
morning
right.
or after 10 at night. So.
Yeah.
Couple of general questions. We're near the end of the year, and we always tend to quantify one year versus another year.
Yeah.
So a general question is, in your opinion, is Oshkosh safer in 2008 than it was in 2007?
Well, that's, yes, I do believe it is. And there's several ways of measuring that.
Okay.
And, you know, we can go statistically and read into anything statistics. Now, we are required to report our UCR incidents to the FBI, and they're the Uniform Crime Reporting, which are the 7 major offenses that occur.
Okay.
Robberies, burglaries, aggravated assaults, arsons, auto thefts, major thefts. And where we are in comparison, we're down in robberies,
Okay.
we're up a little bit in aggravated assaults. Burglaries and property offenses are about the same, but those are numbers. And many of those things can be directly controlled, others cannot. But that's something we have to look at. Clearance rates, you know, the major offenses that we have, are we doing a good job investigating them and holding people accountable to them? Our clearance rate is routinely higher than the state average and the national average as far as clearance rates. Those things we report annually in our annual report. But I think the true test is really what the perception is and what people feel, and the anecdotal stuff that comes out from people as they're talking to you that just say, yeah, you know, I used to feel like I couldn't walk at 10 o'clock at night in the dark down my street, now I can. And the feel-good kind of things, I think, that, you know, sometimes mean more than statistics, and overwhelmingly, we're getting very positive feedback. We're connecting through our team policing efforts. We are connecting better with people. They're telling us things that are going on and how they're feeling, and you know, from that I get a sense that, you know, we are. And you know, Oshkosh has always been a very safe community, and the strategies that we're using, I think, will instill and heighten confidence and trust in the things that we're doing. We can always do better.
Sure.
We're working to try and do better. So I think, you know, it is.
I have a follow-up on that, because to me this kind of says this. The city survey went out,
Yeah.
and they had 4 high priorities in the city survey. The first 3 were streets, sewer, and streets, and police was 4, and fire service was 4.
Sure.
And I took that to mean that it's not a greater issue for them than it might have been in other years, in part, I guess, because we had the flood and the sewers and all. I understand
Yeah.
that. But it seems to me, if there would have been more dissatisfaction or more distrust, that would have been higher. And I took that as a compliment, that things are better.
Yeah, and you can read that
Sure.
any way
Oh,
you
no,
want.
sure.
I took it the same way,
Yeah.
and I think perhaps, and I'm only, you know, making a statement on my perception, that the recent floods of June you know, 6th and 13th, certainly had an impact in the results of some of those surveys. It may have impact to have a higher rate of return because things are on the mind of people. Not saying that's a bad thing at all, because it identifies maybe some infrastructure issues that need to be dealt with. But I did read that as being
That's the way I
positive
read
as
it,
well.
just, you know. Personal question. How long have you been chief of police?
About a year and 3 months.
Okay, another one of these chronological questions.
Sure.
Assessing your time, what's been your biggest surprise, and what's been your best satisfaction since you've been chief?
Well, my biggest surprise is how fast time flies.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like...
You don't look any older.
Well, some days I feel older.
I understand. You got more hair than I do.
The time has just flown by,
Okay.
and that's because of, you know, just how busy things
Sure.
are. And we've gone through a lot of challenges in the last year, as well as successes and opportunities. And one of the challenges that we've had is an extreme turnover in personnel. I mean, we knew we were going to have a fairly large retirement in 2008, and so that impacted us. We had people leave the department for a variety of reasons, and so that created some challenges in that you're losing a lot of experience, but at the same time it was a wonderful opportunity for us because it allowed us, through our recruitment effort, to select new officers that meshed and fit perfectly with our mission, vision, values, and our team policing. And so we've hired some very outstanding people. You know, the men and women of the Oshkosh Police Department are second to none. They're true professionals. They like what they're doing for the most part. They buy into the direction that we're going, and they're working very hard. And so that's been exciting. And so I think
Kind of have a new team in part.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And with that transition, I've been able to replace almost, certainly half of, maybe a little more than half of my supervisory team, and been able to put my immediate commanders in place that a lot of chiefs go through a dozen years before they're able to promote the people closest to them. So I'm surrounded by a team of wonderful captains that, you know, buy into the direction that we're going and are working very hard to see us meet our goals. And all those things, September 10th, 2007, shortly after I became chief, we implemented team policing. That's kind of our milestone benchmark. And we've had lots of successes over the last year that has, I think, made the reason why my time has gone so fast so far. I mean, there have been challenges. You know, I started with a 100-day plan that's grown into a 400-day plan because there's just so many demands and things that come up. But for the most part, I'm holding myself to what I said I was going to do. Surprises, I don't really know that there were any real
How about
surprises.
one disappointment you want to share?
Disappointment is probably in the personnel
Okay.
changes, you know, the experience that we've lost. You know, we could predict that was going to happen based on some retirements. You know, the budgets have been difficult,
And going
not
to be more
surprising,
difficult.
and going to be more difficult, and we've got to work through those things.
Yeah.
You know, we are taking, our strategy, our philosophy is, you know, we can't continue to keep doing the same thing and expect different results. And so we're taking a look at the organization from top to bottom, and we're evaluating all our processes, all our systems, all our people for efficiencies and effectiveness, and making some difficult decisions. And you know, the budget in some regards helps us to make that decision, but I think we're coming forward with a very prudent and fiscally responsible budget that enhances the service delivery and makes you feel safer. And you know, our focus right now are getting our cops on the street, getting our officers out there, doing very proactive problem solving, you know, identifying quality of life issues and expending our resources towards resolving those issues. And some of the things that had less of an impact, we have to decide of not doing those things anymore, and that's the difficult part.
He's mentioned budget. Can we go to budget? Would this be a good, or do you want to go somewhere else first?
Well, no, that's fine. I just wanted to say one thing. You
Yeah.
know, while we don't have, you were talking about the personnel being second to none, Chief, and you know, while we don't have a female chief of police here like they do down in Milwaukee, we've got a female who's, isn't she second in command?
Yes,
Cindy Thaldorf?
Captain Cindy Thaldorf. I've had the wonderful opportunity to promote her and move her into our captain of administration, which is considered second. Yes,
And she's been with the department for as long as I can remember.
a number of years. Yes.
You know, it's nice to see women moving up the ranks as well.
I'm proud to announce that I've had the opportunity to promote one of our female detectives to sergeant of detectives. So we have 2 females currently in our supervisory ranks, and organization-wide, you know, we're at 14% of our organization is female, which matches the national average and you know what you strive to be. So yeah, I think we're becoming a more diverse organization. You know, we've hired our first African American officer. We have an Asian officer that has been assets to us in connecting with different segments of the community that you know, that it hasn't always been the case. So we're very excited about the direction we're going as far as our personnel.
Sure. Well, personnel is certainly a big part of anyone's budget, and so let's get into the budget.
Just a preview for our viewers. This is the 20th of November, and the budget that we're going to talk about has not been approved yet. It'll be approved at the next council meeting on Tuesday. But I just want to run through, because I think people would like to kind of, what is your budget for 2009? Just the total dollars.
The proposed budget that we're moving forward is $11,125,000, which, you know, of course, 96% of the budget is personnel costs and, you know, wages and base salaries and things like that. So when we're talking an operating budget, we're talking about $493,000, and quite frankly, the operating budget that I'm submitting is not much higher than the operating budget from 1993.
Okay.
And so there hasn't been a lot of fluctuation there. What tends to make the operating part of the budget fluctuate is whether we purchase vehicles or not. It's a pretty bare bones budget that you know, I think we get a lot of bang for our buck there.
Sure.
And the budget that I've submitted, and you know, the council is still deciding, and we've had a number of workshops and a number of meetings to discuss that, and you know, they're doing their job that they need to do. But my total budget came in at 0.19% lower than last year's budget overall. We've had a little bit of an increase in the operating budget, but my personnel costs are down by 0.2%.
Maybe you can't answer this, but the percent of your budget, what percent is local taxes, shared revenue from the state and the feds? Any idea on that? Tough.
Yeah, it's tough for me to say.
Okay.
I mean, the finance director would be a little bit more than that. I think I did hear some figures at the last meeting that the proposed budget is 3.8%, you know, of the total package. But and that's really a
But
that's
the
really a
local
number for
taxes must be the overwhelming part of your budget, don't you think? You're not getting a lot from the feds, are you, or from the state? This is local.
Yeah, I mean, there are some state contributions, but you know, most of it is through the local tax base.
How big is the police department? How many people do you have?
We have 99 sworn officers.
Okay.
And 38 civilians.
Okay.
And 21 of those are full-time, 21 are part-time, 17 are full-time.
Okay.
And the non-sworn part of the organization are the support people, our front desk workers, our word processors, our community programs coordinator, you know, and our property clerks. But we have 99 sworn officers. Currently, we're one understaffed. We're working very hard to fill that last position. We anticipate some immediate retirements in 2009, so we're working very hard on filling those.
Is there a median price for these 99? What's an average or a median salary of these 99 people?
I think the last posting, it listed at somewhere around 40 to 43,000 starting pay, which is pretty comparable to our comparable agencies throughout Wisconsin and in the valley.
Is this a good market? I mean, you said you went through some. Are a lot of people
Yeah.
applying for these jobs?
Not really.
Not really.
It's down.
Really? How do you explain that?
I don't have a real solid explanation for it, other than I think to a certain extent we're still competing with the techie era.
Okay.
You know, the technology, the kind of the computer gurus that are in the .com industry yet, that are still out there looking for those supposed high-paying, you know, stay-at-home working jobs that, of course, we all know don't exist
Cheryl has
to
one.
the extent of
Well,
what it was
working-
marketed
I don't know
to
how high paying it is, but
be. And some of it, I think, is you know, as a result of our war efforts,
Sure.
where people that normally would be pursuing law enforcement careers have chosen to assist in the military, and we see some fluctuation there. I suspect that, you know, as troops are drawn down, that we'll have some interest. But, you know, we're not alone. It's a phenomenon that's happening in law enforcement with it takes kind of a special person to want to get into this field, and the private sector, for whatever reason, is more of a draw right now. We did our last written process that we did earlier in the month. We had mid-40s for candidates. Now, this was a long time ago, years ago when I was competing. It wouldn't be unusual to have 300, 400, 500 candidates applying for 1 or 2 openings. And now, you know, we're establishing eligibility lists, and it's very difficult to sift through 45, 50 candidates that are applying for multiple departments that are not really that top quality people. And so we've gone through entire processes of not selecting anybody because they just don't match what we're looking for. So it's been a challenge.
Is there anything new in your 2009 budget that you didn't have in 2008? I know it's leaner, but have you got any changes?
No, not anything of any significance. I mean, we've had just specific line items that have gone up and down. One effort that we're trying to increase in is our technology.
Okay.
We're looking at improving our phone systems that allow officers to be almost a one-on-one phone issue. We think that will enhance our communication with the community. Right now, we have phones assigned to a team, and officers are supposed to take those phones out. Where I want to go is where each officer is issued a phone with voicemail, so that there's this one-on-one communication possibility. So when I'm an officer connecting with you in the public, I can give you a direct number to call me, you'll get me, or my voicemail, most times me. And you won't have to go through, you know, the bureaucracy of an organization that sometimes occurs. And there's that communication that can happen more efficiently and more effectively. So that will increase our costs of our phone systems, you know, a little bit. We're also looking at, in our technology efforts, going to digital reporting. One thing I want to emphasize is that, you know, departments don't work to themselves. We do a lot of communicating and working as a team. And so what, for instance, Tony Newman and his IT staff are developing has an impact with us, and we're constantly communicating about how can we be efficient with what you're using that we could use. So there's a combination of a new phone system that's being installed with Laserfiche that right now, when officers go and investigate a complaint in the field, they will dictate all the information into a tape recorder. You'll turn in an old-fashioned tape to our word processors. It'll all be prioritized. They will then put it into a machine that they can listen and data enter, transcribe it that way. We are trying to reprioritize those incidents, use our cell phone technology to call into the servers that are accessible by our word processors. That will be prioritized. Only the very high priority complaints will be dictated and typed in. Those that are of lesser priority will remain, other than roll information entered into our records management system, will remain in a digital voice format. And so we'll reduce our backlog of tapes. We'll be able to use electronic media to disseminate files to the public on an open records request, to the DA's office or prosecutors in the case of a, of a case that's going to court. And if officers need to go back and listen to it, they can simply have access to that voice file and listen to it. If we have to go back and transcribe it, we can do that. So we're trying to make ourselves a little more user-friendly when it comes to sharing information with the public. Recently, through our website, we've given not only insurance companies, but citizens that are involved in crashes the ability to go to our website, enter the information that's been given to the officer on the crash, and they can get an electronic version of their crash right off our website.
So that's an actual report then?
That's right.
Okay.
We've installed what's called a track system in our squads. It's an electronic system for ticket writing and doing crashes. So it's increased the efficiency of officers where they don't take the MV4000 form anymore, handwrite it, where we make copies then, and then upon request, copies go out. This all is done by the onboard computer through a track system. We can print out citations electronically. That citation then can be electronically forwarded to Madison, where that is dumped into their database, reduces their data entry on their end, reduces data entry on our end. It becomes an electronic file that we can go to a wireless hotspot within the community, download it right into our system, and it becomes usable information. And so from that, we have the ability now to email out files electronically upon open request, and we've created that mechanism then on our website where it cuts out delays potentially, it cuts costs, and it enhances the efficiency of our support staff by not having to make photocopies, not wasting paper. It's stored in a format that can be easily disseminated. And so as we continue to grow in those kind of things, we will be enhancing our technology and sharing of information to be more efficient.
Do people, Chief, then have to, do they still have to pay for reports and like enter a credit card information online, or is it free now?
In the case of the crash report, that's all disseminated free.
Okay. And if someone wants, they submit an open records request for something, is that also free then, since there's no paperwork involved?
Eventually, when we get into where a digitized report is electronically sent, we haven't totally discussed that yet, but as it becomes efficient and there's ease of disseminating that information, there's very little cost to process that, so it may not require a fee. If we still have to make hard copies and mail it out or send it out or have it available, obviously there is a charge. But those are all things that we're working through yet.
Sure, sure. Do you want to go on to gangs?
And deer.
Gangs and deer.
We have a lot of time, so you go where you want to go.
Well, let's go with the gangs first.
Sure.
The State Department of Justice has recently released a report on gang activity, and I know that the report anyway, seemed to feel that gang activity was pretty rampant in our area, but you don't feel it's quite that bad?
No, I don't think it's rampant. I think there's an escalation of concern. Oshkosh doesn't operate in isolation. We don't have a bubble where nothing comes in and nothing goes out. And so we are seeing an influence from Milwaukee, Chicago, Minneapolis. The interstate systems certainly are a corridor, for the distribution of drugs and drugs, and the ability to market that increases the likelihood of gangs coming in. Our officers were instrumental in part of that summit. We completed surveys based on our incident reports and some of the things that our officers are seeing. Currently, we have 2 officers and a supervisor that focus on gang activity, that are gleaning from reports, intelligence that would suggest that there's identified gangs. We're in close communication with the schools and other community groups such as the Boys and Girls Club to find out what's going on, and then it's just the street level officers that are working that recognize that. And so we were part of that summit, and everybody in the county was instrumental in supplying that information. So you can read from that document and form your own opinions as to whether you think it's rampant or not rampant. I wouldn't say it's rampant. You know, the perception of gangs involved in drive-by shootings and you know, homicides and things like that, we're certainly not experiencing that. However, I will say that some of the more recent homicides and things we've had certainly have had a drug influence, and that is concerning to us. And you know, we need to focus on the drug activity in our community, and our drug task force, you know, we're begging for them to be active in our community, and our team policings are being very proactive in shutting down drug houses. But we are seeing an escalation in this, you know, whether it's people in our community that have an affinity for belonging to something, or an influx of people that see Oshkosh as kind of a territory that they can grow. We're seeing an increase in that. I wouldn't say it's rampant.
Okay.
But we can't let it become, you know, what our neighbors to the south experience down in Milwaukee. And so we need to get a handle on it. We need to use this information and develop strategies. I've called an internal summit within our own department for January 7th of next year, where our gang people that are monitoring these things, and they have other responsibilities. This isn't solely what they do. We can't afford to do that, but we do need to monitor that. And I've asked them to put together information to present to me and the command staff to give us the state of our city. You know, what is our gang situation here? We all recognize that there is activity that's occurring, but how, to what extent? You know, who are the players? What are the major gangs? What incidents are they involved in? And we do track those things, and we have intelligence files on that.
You feel comfortable sometime late January and the report's done?
Sure.
Would you come back and share that with us?
Sure.
Yeah.
Be happy to do that.
Okay,
That would be
great.
good. Yeah.
We're almost out of time. We've got about a minute left. What's happening with the deer situation by Vulcan Quarry?
Well, we are presenting a resolution at the council meeting on the 25th. That is the next step. It's an application for, through a DNR grant for culling of the deer. That is the last and final phase of our four-part process that we've put forward. We have sent out electronically emails to those people that responded to our initial survey to see, you know, how are the non-lethal landscaping techniques, how has that worked, to what effect. We've gotten mixed results, and many people say that the herd has increased and it's still eating them out of house and home, that they can't, you know, beautify their yards. And so we're comfortable in moving forward to say we need to implement the last phase. And so we'll be asking for the permission to finish the grant to pay for that.
Would it not be easier to maybe just tranquilize them with a dart and move them somewhere else?
Actually, we can't do that.
Really?
DNR regulations, because of the chronic wasting disease, will not allow deer to be moved from one area to the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very good.
Good idea.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought it would
You
be.
tried.
Yes, I've made an effort, and
Yes.
you
Should
know,
feel better.
it failed. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, thanks so much for being
Yeah,
here, Chief.
thanks
we
a
really
lot. Boy,
appreciate
you
it.
really
Thanks for
appreciate
inviting
the
me.
detail of your budget responses and your openness to talk
Yep.
with us. It's
Wow.
a good meeting.
Well, and again, thinking outside of the box.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we need. So, thanks very much.
Appreciate
We'll look
it.
forward to having you back in a few months. Then.
Be happy to do so.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. Thanks to everybody, the crew, and to you at home for watching, and to the Chief for being here. And we will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.